As men's health specialists, we are pretty deep in the manosphere. And I thought it was a good opportunity for us to talk about the documentary, but also just talk about the manosphere and the red pill culture.
This is the Man Up Podcast, a doctor's guide to men's health.
If you've been enjoying listening to our podcast, please hit the subscribe button on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts.
My name is Dr. Kevin Chu, and I'm joined as always with my co-host, Dr. Justin Dubin. This week's episode is titled Man Up, Red Pill or Red Flag? Breaking Down the Manosphere. Justin, this actually it was entertaining, I guess, documentary by Louis Theroux's titled Inside the Manosphere. We both watched it, came out on Netflix, and, we thought we had some ideas on it, some commentary on it, and thought it'd be a good topic to talk about on the podcast.
Yeah, I think that as men's health specialists, we are pretty deep in the manosphere of the positives, the negatives. And a lot of people watching that documentary had reached out to, I know, you and me about our comments. And I thought it was a good opportunity for us to talk about the documentary, but also just talk about the manosphere and the red pill, culture, as especially someone who lives in Miami, and you have lived in Miami and in LA, where, people are trying to incorporate these ideas, right? So it's a very interesting topic, an important topic, especially for men who, for whatever reason, are all really into this stuff.
It's crazy, man. Look, our podcast is titled Man Up, and we sit here and we talk about things that you are going to able to do. We talk to specialists we bring on to man up the right way, right? That's what I would like to say, the right way. But as we'll talk about, as we sit here and discuss this documentary, I'll say it, the Man Up Podcast is nowhere as popular as, Sneeko or, nowhere popular as, and so, but yeah, I think there's something interesting about all that. And there may be something more kind of revealing about it. So it's, I must say though, I was entertained. There was some influencers who I had not heard of, but there's the other ones that I, much more had heard about them, seen them on the Twitterverse or all that stuff.
Yeah. So let's get into it then. Kevin, just describe to us, like, what are we talking about when we're talking about this, like, red pill mentality, this manosphere?
Well, so let's define manosphere, right? Manosphere is a, collection of subreddits, promoting anti-feminist ideologies, focusing on men's rights, pickup artistry, and male self-improvement. And a lot of the words that we commonly hear associated with manosphere is toxic masculinity. Now, I love the red pill thing because it just felt like, we watched The Matrix back in when it came out, like early 2000s, right?
1999.
Oh, 1999. Great film. But the whole idea, the whole premise that, like, hey, look, there's a life of ignorance, and then there's a life of being awakened to this reality, this machine that may be controlling us. And so that's where that red pill comes from. And as you watch this documentary, and as I'm sure a lot of our listeners have seen on their Instagram reels or on TikTok, where, a lot of these guys will have you convinced that, we are, there is a construct above us that basically is running, keeping us, preventing us from becoming who we really are, and that there is an agenda against us. And so that's where that red pill comes from. And basically that once you kind of become red pilled, you become awakened to this new reality of, I guess, that they've been awakened to. So
It's listen, I love The Matrix. Wasn't as, the second one okay, third one terrible, the last one horrendous. But
I
the
even forgot about
original,
the last one. Oh yeah.
it was terrible. I think it was Matrix. No, I think Revolutions was 3, 2 was Reloaded, Revolutions was maybe 3, and then Resurrection was the last.
Oh, Resurrections, yeah.
Which all horrible. I would say the second one has that good action scene with the car in like the highway, which is cool. But
Yeah.
All-time movie, and the funny part thing, I'm just gonna point out the irony of using that movie. It was directed by the Wachowskis, who are now
Yeah,
transgender women.
that's
So,
correct.
and a lot of people interpret that movie actually as, people being trapped in this alternative sexual space where they identified as something else in another way. So this movie, which is being used as this manliest thing,
Yeah.
in many ways is created by someone who doesn't even identify as a man anymore. So how is that not hysterical and very funny to some level of this? And I don't even know if the people who push this red pill idea even know that, because they probably haven't even seen the movie realistic. So I wanted to point that out because it's a really funny thought, when you actually look back and when you look at, what has transpired since this movie actually came out. And as a fan of film, it was always really cool to point these little intricacies out for the people who really take it so seriously. But you know, why has this idea, this manosphere thing, become so popular? Because one thing that was very enlightening to me in this documentary, and I would love your opinion, is I figured like a lot of this stuff was in like mid 20s guys to 30s. All of the people who were in this documentary, it was really just young kids. Like you had like 10 to 18-year
Yeah.
old boys, not men yet, like loving all of this stuff. And when you see what people like HS Tiki Taki are talking about, they're talking about masturbation, sex, OnlyFans. How are these young kids getting involved in this? Now, listen, I don't have a kid. I don't have a kid. You have a son. Like,
Yeah.
how did that impact your thoughts when you're seeing this stuff?
Well, look, I think, and that's the whole social media and how I'll tell you as a parent, like, man, my kid getting a phone, being like connected, it's gonna be pretty restricted. I'm gonna be very honest about that. But that's because there's books, there's data out there showing that one, it causes a lot of anxiety, it causes a lot of distress. It's seen both in females and in males. But what that drives is, and I think it's representative in this documentary, is that, look, we are all people that want a community, right? We want a community. We seek acceptance and we seek a community. Back in the day, there's a lot of beauty in being different and stuff like that. But nowadays, you're kind of like, with the way social media is, it kind of feels like you got to look like this way, or if you're not, I'm going to broadcast very broadly, like, hey, you are not a part of this community. You are doing things wrong. When you see all these guys on the manosphere, you take a look at it, like every guy's jacked, right? Every guy's jacked. Man up, Justin and I have a little bit of work to do, but those guys
Yeah.
are jacked. These guys are jacked, and they are what all these 12-year-olds, 14-year-olds, they're like, yo, these guys got the women, they got the cars, they got the money. So at an age whenever you're like still developing and trying to find yourself, immediately you're like, oh, this is what I want. This is what I'm going to keep getting fed. And you want to be a part of that community, and so you start listening to them. You start listening to everything that they say. And so, from my perspective, at least, I think this is, as you know, this is driven by social media, right, Justin? Or what you thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's how these guys make money, right? They go through social media. They come up with the most absurd things that they can do and say, and use illegal drugs to build their bodies in ways that make you look larger than life and say larger than life things, where in reality you're a scam artist. You have no value except taking advantage of other people who unknowingly think you're cool when you're not. And at the end of the day, you're a loser, you're a misogynist, you're probably racist, you're probably homophobic, you're probably anti-Semitic, like you're all of the things. And there is something somehow where people, despite all those things, are unabashedly themselves and saying, this is the way that I am, and the man doesn't want you to be this way. It sticks for people. And it sticks for people because of exactly what you said. I think that there's so many different norms going on as younger people now than we grew up in, especially with the social media exposure. I think the COVID experience ruined a lot of social
Yeah.
interactions for a lot of the younger generation, and it's a perfect storm of people being forced to their phones to learn how to socialize, people being forced to their phones to learn how to, actually be in relationships. And and it's, this generation lost in some ways for a lot of the stuff that is hard for us to relate to because of the technological gap, because of the, exposure to experiential gap. So it is upsetting and it's concerning to see.
You know what's and one thing I wanna, talk about is, look, you the way that and I think, Justin, you've actually, published on it or even, commentated on it, on, on interviews or stuff like that, but it's interesting because of how the algorithms are made, and these guys have it down, right? They have it
Right.
down. They know exactly how to master the algorithm. Meanwhile, and I'm not gonna speak like, "Oh, we're doing, God's work here," or anything like that, but there are
We
other
are.
many other docs and many other docs or other, people who really mean well and want the best out of people. But you know what? They're not again, the algorithm and nailing it down. That there is art to it. That takes time. That takes work, and it is a form of mastering something, right? And and that's why I think there's a necessity, and why you talk a lot about it at the conferences you go to, why it is actually important for docs to get on there and try to master these algorithms, because that's how you get the proper information, hopefully displayed to the right audience.
Yeah, I think it's even simpler than that. The truth is, as a healthcare provider, you're going to give information that's typically not sexy, that is
Yeah.
bland, and that
Yeah.
is not controversial.
Yeah.
Unless you're responding to someone saying something controversial. The
Right.
algorithm doesn't favor facts. It doesn't favor anything that is flat. The algorithm favors at this point anger, anxiety, stress, things to be debated, things to make someone feel usually not positive. There is a happy part of the internet. I can't
Yeah.
find it. And so, that is very easy for people to come on, say something incredibly offensive and get a billion likes because
Yeah.
everyone's telling them, you know, that they hate that person, right? But they're
Yeah.
making money off of it. And that's where
Yeah.
these people shine. No one's going to come on and give me a million likes for saying, hey, eat healthy, have a good diet, and you're
Maybe
going
if we're
to,
more jacked. Maybe if we're
yeah,
more jacked.
exactly.
Maybe that's just kidding.
So I think that that's a real part of that algorithm, and that's why it really does work, like you're saying. But there's other like I want to get into like the popularity of these things and why it is so popular because I think by understanding that we can actually come back because I think that there's a reason why these guys are popular. One is it that as much as we hate the manosphere, there are things that they are getting right, and that's why they're winning. Right. One thing is that men are struggling. We're absolutely struggling right now. There is a huge mental health crisis for men beyond the stigma of men's health things that we're talking about, there is a male loneliness epidemic, right? Believe it or not, about 38% of US males experience moderate to severe loneliness, and it's greater in men than women and it increases with individualism like you were saying before, right? If you're different, you're going to feel that loneliness more, but it actually decreases with age. So it's that perfect group of people that are coming online who feel different, who are seeking to be part of something, and are younger, and they find these people who do that. And men who experience loneliness are 14 times more likely to have major depressive disorder and 11 times more likely to have generalized anxiety disorder. It's associated loneliness. This is crazy. It's associated with alterations in default your mode network, your executive functions, your control functions, your visual attention network, and your reward network. So, you're actually altering the way that you perceive people, engage with people. And young, lonely men, particularly, face an elevated risk of suicidality. And so when you look at all these things and how lonely a lot of men are, because maybe they're not doing the things that they were doing in previous generations, or they're going online to satisfy their social um, desires that we didn't have before. it's a no-brainer that they're trying to find something to hold on to, that happens to be the worst people on earth, but that's what we get.
I mean, think about it, right? I mean, I'll speak in frank terms. When you're in your, prepubescent or pubescent years, what's driving a lot of guys is, trying to get some girls, right? The
Yeah,
majority, right? And, you can think back on it. I can think back on it. There's times when you liked the girl and you got, probably rejected or it just wasn't happening for you. Back in the day, we didn't really have the internet. You just kind of go like, I'm going to go hang out with my buddies and kind of chat about it and whatever. And you're like, shit, that sucks. But you figure it out and you kind of like
right.
it's not a like, hey, I'm gonna take my anger and find other people that match this anger that I have. Um, I think I talked about it on a previous podcast, but in this book, The Anxious Generation, it's really interesting. When you watch the documentary, a lot of them are live streaming this stuff, right? They're live streaming, and you see these chats, which I never understand. I'm looking, I'm like, the chats are just flying, and I'm like,
Right.
you can't read any of this, right? But that's actually one of the problems that that book talks about, which is super interesting, is that communication is supposed to be closed circle. Like when I'm talking to you, Justin, you listen, you look at me, there's eye contact, and then you respond back to me. It goes back and forth. There's some sort of like, there's communication there. In these chat boxes, you can literally go like, F you, F you, F you, F you, F you. No one's responding to you. You're getting your message out, but no one is talking back to you. But then you feel like, oh yeah, like I got my message out there. Right. And then so that keeps going one way. You keep whatever you're saying, no one will disagree with you, nothing like that. You just keep thinking you're getting your voice heard out there when you're literally communicating with no one, right? Again, these chats are just flying up and down, and that was a really interesting thing. And again, and I think you kind of we'll probably talk about it later. It's all just about like, yeah, you keep getting served all these things that says like, whatever you're saying, you're right, you're right, you're right, and like, just keep going that way. And that kind of like starts taking you down and starts taking a lot of your thoughts out of the process.
In an echo chamber that is created online by all of these places, you're never going to have a different opinion. It's
Yeah.
just going to be the same opinion. And when you hear the same opinion over and over and over, that opinion doesn't become opinion anymore. It becomes fact. And that's the issue here, right? You have
Yeah.
these group chats, you have these telescopes of everyone creating the same mentality, the same idea, whether it's strongly anti-women, looks maxing, becoming, some scam artist guy, how to make the most money at the expense of others. When everyone is willing to be in this echo chamber to create a sense of community, I mean, you're going to say whatever it takes to continue to be part of that community. And that can change your mindset eventually. And I think that also goes to this idea that, there is this lack of guidance for a lot of young men in this space. And I think there was clear in this documentary financial concerns. And there's a lot of research that's been going on about this now where, every day we see AI is going to remove 50% of the jobs in the market.
Yeah.
Don't go to college, go to trade school
Yeah.
and all these things. And you see on social media people living these lavish lives, and where when you ask younger generations what they want to be an influencer because they believe truly that they have a better chance of making it in the United States and being a successful person by making a lot of money through that means than working hard, going to school, doing the other paths. And when you have financial stresses and you see these opportunities that these people are taking and they're making it, however you may define it, that's where you get a lot of young people pivoting what they would previously be considering as a career or an idea of what they want to be in their future and using these people because this is the kind of leadership that we're seeing unfortunately from younger people who are forging the way for others. And obviously this is not to be like doomsday level because there's a lot of good people who are still leading the way, and there are leaders in the world and in different careers, and there's a lot of young people who still see those opportunities and are taking them. But we still have to recognize that there's a growing population of younger people who are turning against the societal norms. And oftentimes that's okay, but in certain situations where it can be very, very bad.
That's a fantastic point. And I mean, look, I'll voice my opinion though. I will say, and I probably think you probably agree. Like you kind of got a feel for a lot of these guys entering into the current like era that we're going into. It
Yeah.
is scary. It is scary even for us, right? Like it used to be like you go to college, you work hard, you go to whatever you want to do after college, you work, and your job's assured, right? And you're going to be fine. You work hard, you work fine. But just like you said, right? A lot of people doing very well or appear like they're doing well at a younger age, right? Again, very exposure is very easy on social media and yeah, let's be real. Like this AI stuff probably is causing a lot of people like, I got to YOLO and do whatever it takes now to get capital because I want to go become a lawyer. I keep getting fed news that says like, hey, you know what? Lawyers not going to need like 50% of you in 5 years. So I get that, man. I get it. And that I think that is a real problem and I empathize with them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna say this. I say this. I've told you this, and I believe this. I don't think it's a controversial take. I do think that college overall is overrated. I
Yeah.
think that it's not for everyone. I think that we've pushed a lot of people into debt because the norm
Yeah.
was to go to college. I think community college is excellent. I think that trade school is excellent. Having said that, though, I'm not saying that like no one should be going to college. I mean, like there are a lot of concerns on the other higher levels where people are, there is this divide that you see where, you have Sam Altman being like, hey, no one should really go to college anymore. You should just all go to trade school. It's like, oh, so we can let you do everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, there is this, and this is obviously like a controversial take, but like it's very there. We don't know what's going to happen. But when you're a younger kid and you have all these adults telling you that AI is taking over, creating these stresses, where do you turn other than the internet? And you find these guys who are doing it without AI, they're doing it by interacting with people. It's rough. It's rough out there for sure. So I think like we really just I do want to get into this idea of like toxic masculinity.
Mm.
Because that seems to be somehow the selling point that really wins. We've addressed the money, the financial concerns, kind of the social stuff. But what about the ideas of toxic masculinity? And why do you think that that's one of the major drivers? Anti-feminism, anti, you know, anti-gay, anti-feminism, racism, this whole toxic masculinity thing. Why do you think that that has been like the major point in this manosphere angle to get people to join?
Well, look, let me offer one perspective that I have. It's when things you are doing feel like they're not leading to everyday success that you're having. You look for reasons, right? And a lot of those reasons may not a lot of reasons what we talk about, right? And I think those were some points we want to go over before, but like, what are the good things with Manosphere? Like having good fitness. Yeah, that's a great fucking thing,
Yeah,
right? That's
absolutely.
awesome. Like, yeah, man. Like, maybe some of these guys have, again, like you mentioned, using illegal drugs to achieve a body type that you cannot get naturally, but still the idea of good fitness, eating well, like those guys are going to talk about that. And so that's
Yeah.
good. They're working out. That's good. But when you start, kind of like saying like, oh, and then they'll kind of point out like, oh, but like, when they gave quote unquote females more power, more voting power and, trying to get equal pay. That is why you're not getting your job, and that is why like you're not getting promoted at work, right? It's easy to kind of use that as an excuse for why maybe things aren't working out for you. And again, when you get fed that on a loop, all of a sudden you're like, man, they've been just trying to take the man down. They want us to have low testosterone. They're trying to keep that from us. They want me to be quote unquote like impotent or like just not. And so
Soy
then,
boy.
yeah. And so like, yeah, that's my perspective of why this has become, so popular. I don't know about what you think, Justin.
Yeah, I think it's just another way that, becoming that alpha male is what a lot of people are struggling to see themselves as when they go online. And if you can have someone, right, we've said this a million times. We're all, society is overweight, we're inactive, we're high stress, high anxiety, we're not sleeping well, we're eating like crap, and so, when you have someone who comes along and says, Yeah, well, and it makes you honestly not feel good, but you also probably feel less desirable and you don't, exude confidence in yourself. And when you're trying to find a partner and you're not doing well dating, because all you see all the time now is dating is the worst. We're all dating later, we're all focusing on our jobs. And so when you can't really stand what's going on within you, you have these external things that you can blame. It's not me, it's that they have set their values too high. And you have someone who says, no, you're good. You just need to build up the way that I am. And then it's on them to figure it out because you actually have value more so than anyone else. I think that that's a big selling point is like this idea that you're worth more than you think you are, but also that value has been diminished because everyone else is treating you like shit because they don't want you to be a man. They don't want you to be the man that you should be. And that we blame women, we blame certain races, we blame certain religions, we blame the government for trying to keep you down as the man that thousands of years we've roamed as men. And and this idea of being that man, whatever means it is, and taking this idea, cavemen, we had 5 wives and we just had sex with whoever. And it's like, and this is, you're telling a guy who hasn't had sex maybe ever,
Yeah.
and they're like, yeah, that sounds cool. I want to go back to that. If I follow this guy, you're telling me I can have sex? That's what it comes down to. Like, I think we're pretty simple as men.
Yeah.
You and I both know it. We're sex driven a lot of the
Right.
times, right? And if these guys are pushing sex, but not only pushing sex, they're pushing it that you can have your choice of who you want if you do it the way that I tell you. And I think that because they are not of value to you, you bring the value to them. And when you think about it that way, you're really creating this idea of building someone up, but also bringing other people down. And it creates such a big gap that it sounds awesome to people, right? It's a bigger gap than they could ever conceptualize. So I think, half of it is not just bringing you up, but bringing so many people down below them where they were before. To bring them down, you bring yourself up. It just widens that gap of what this perceived value is.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's easier for us at our age to recognize, less so when you're younger. And then, like, we see it, right? You'll see, like, look at me. Look how big I've gotten. Type peptides in the comment section if you want to know. And I'm just like, yo, like, how many of these fuckers need to like have the secret sauce, but you got to type peptides in the fucking like, and you're like, it's for everything. Their grift just keeps changing, right? First grip, like, a lot of these guys started like doing video games, right? And they need to make money off the Twitch and stuff. So they're like, type this in the box or subscribe to my Discord and, I'm going to give you all the tricks on how to beat this game, right? And they just kind of like just transverse as they got a little older to women, right? And then they was like, hey, yo, like type in like, sex appeal and I'm going to teach you exactly how to get the women. When that grift was over, they moved over. And, we talked about peptides. And while we do believe there is a lot of value that peptides can bring, you can see the grifter just dive straight into this fucking space. And it's the same kind of shit, right?
It's 100%. These people, and this is, and I think one of the more powerful parts of the documentary, especially for HS Tiki Taki, was they clearly don't believe in anything,
No.
right? What they believe in is money. And at any cost, they are willing to do it. How can you have someone who literally says, don't use porn, don't ever masturbate, you're a loser if you have sex or look at someone on OnlyFans, then go ahead and take the same audience and say, use this OnlyFans account, subscribe to my OnlyFans account, the people that I manage. It is, and it's crazy. It's so interesting. And what the introspective part really is that we have to remember this is all online. Anytime they're doing the stuff on the documentary, they were filming because they wanted to make sure that they were online. When the camera's off, who are they really?
Yeah.
Not that person. They're not that person. You saw it from the mother of HS Tiki talking like, what are you saying? Why are you saying these things? You saw it from what's the guy, Miles Gaines, who lives in Miami or
Oh,
whatever? Myron
Myron
Gaines.
Gaines.
He's talking with his girlfriend of 2 years. He says the most absurd shit in front of the camera, and he's so soft and
He's
very
holding
timid
that, like,
when he says it.
little white dog, you know?
Yeah.
He's just
And then the girl's like not having it. He's like, "Oh, she'll understand. She understands." She breaks up with him after that. Like,
Yeah.
you know, these are all people that you can look into a camera and say anything to someone, but you can't look at someone in the face, in the eyes, in person. It's a huge experience that is completely different. And most of these guys, they can't do it because they don't believe in it. It's a different experience. And when you see that in that documentary, you realize they live in a fantasy world. And once you realize that they're in a fantasy world, you realize that whatever they're saying, whatever they're doing is not real. And it's not really a future that you should be investing in.
So Justin, wait, let's now tie it back to what does this affect on our space, right? Our wheelhouse, on men's health. Like what are you seeing out there and what do you think it's, kind of downstream effects are going to be?
Well, I think it really comes down to medical misinformation, right? You have people who have no incentive to tell the truth. In fact, actually, they're financially incentivized to say the most controversial things that are completely false, to peddle things that do not work or maybe are contaminated or just some bullshit product. And they're also incentivized to create more fear, anxiety, stress to a society of group of men that already are all of those things. So it's just to sell a product or sell their brand. So what you're seeing is this mental health crisis that is truly becoming worse with people like this. And not only is it becoming worse for those people, it's creating a worse environment for the people around them, right? Unfortunately, creating an idea of misogyny impacts women, as we all know, right? Relationships struggle. A lot of women are scared, truthfully scared when you're not treating them as a human being. So, there's a lot of people who come in and, I see it all the time. I'm sure you see it all the time. They're trying to be your bro and they're talking about all these women they've been with. They're showing, and I try to bring it. You try to bring it back down, and you see that more and more, especially here in Miami, where like these guys are coming in bragging, but they also have erectile dysfunction. So like, what are you doing? Like, you know, your erectile dysfunction is from the stress, the anxiety of lack of relationships, lack of understanding how to actually engage with not only women, just like people in general, your stress of finding a good job because you're not really investing the time that you need to do these things. You're purchasing products or trying to live a lifestyle that's putting you financially in debt because you think that that's going to work. And obviously in Miami, that's like, that's the big thing. People living beyond their means just to look a certain part or assume a certain role. Um, but it is detrimental. It's detrimental to the younger generation. It's detrimental to the people who engage with them in a relationship manner or a professional manner. Now, obviously, is everyone poisoned by this? No, but there is an increasing concern that we're seeing, and it's something that we wanted to talk about.
Yeah, men's health, guys, we are a quote unquote, if you want to think vulnerable population when it comes to dealing with erectile dysfunction. And like, Justin and I see a lot more of it. These guys would come in, it is getting younger. And we talk about like, look, 30% at 30 will deal with ED, 40% at 40 will deal with ED. And they come in looking for solutions. And, we're there to help. We talk about like, PD5 inhibitors, medications and stuff like that. It's always hard whenever we kind of try to direct over like, I talk about sex therapy in like almost all my
Yep.
consultations now. And but that's the one that, like, I would tell is like, I'm like, at the end of the day, I'm like, this is probably what this guy needs and probably is more and more become prevalent. And what compounds it is I feel like, and I don't know, Justin, if you're seeing this a little bit more, feeling it more, is that as these guys, and I don't want to keep saying these guys because they're all guys, they're all are, all guys like us. But as you become more red pilled, right? You start thinking that doctors are in on it too,
Oh yeah.
because they are like, oh, so like, you don't want to give me the meds because you want like my erections to get even worse, so you can like peddle like other stuff and or you want to do surgery on me, all this stuff. Like feeling like we are the ones also like kind of like, running this matrix, quote unquote. And that distrust has, guys going to them, to these manosphere influencers who are peddling their, herbal, whatever stuff, their supplements that they're selling, and their courses that they're selling, everything not what we are trying to, kind of try to help do.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you're pretty much hitting it, right? The manosphere is popular because it tells men what they want to hear, not what they need to hear. And we as doctors tell them what they need to hear. And if they hear that and their problems are solved, the manosphere people go away because we've fixed their sexual health problems. Fixed their other problems, right? I mean, guys don't need a red pill, right? They
Yeah.
actually just need better sleep, maybe a gym membership to exercise, a better diet, and a real conversation about their health. And that's what we provide. And so when you're talking to these people who are pushing a grift, they're going to have you keep coming back for more. Uh, yeah, they're going to tell you not to go see a doctor. And obviously, the comeback is, well, you're big pharma. You want to keep us sick. You want, like you said, like, you don't want to treat me. You want to put me on a medicine. It's like, what the fuck do you think these other people are doing? They're putting you on a supplement. They're putting you on TRT. They're putting you on peptides. They're putting you on some bullshit program that what you're going to have to keep purchasing. Like, it's literally this idea is translated right there, except they're not actually addressing your health problems. They're just addressing their financial gains and taking money from your pocket. So you're 100% right. Like, it's a huge issue that our distrust is eroding, and somehow the trust of these grifters is increasing. Um, so my question for you then is how do I guess from 2 points. One, as a father, I wanna hear your perspective to parents on how to prevent, how can I prevent my kids from getting into this kinda stuff? And then I wanna know what your thoughts are on how to really identify these kind of things early and kinda nip them in the bud if you have a kid or something like that.
I mean, we're living in a time frame where it's going to be very difficult, right? The easy thing for me to say is like, look, yeah, we're going to minimize smartphone usage as a father, right? We're going to minimize social media access. Um, but truth of the matter is peer pressure is tough, right? So again, if you are the kid, your son or, even daughter who's out there and they're not the ones that have any access to Instagram, immediately you're, yeah, look, everyone seeks, they want to be popular. You want to be against like accepted. Immediately they're like, oh, you find out like, oh, all the kids were down the street hanging out at the house because they were on Instagram, said, oh, come over. You weren't on Instagram. So immediately you're left out. So
Okay.
it's going to be problematic regardless, right? And the only again, I think this is a problem that I don't think has a really good answer to. But I think it's just hope, just directing and having more people out there that can kind of again master the algorithm and try to identify, or maybe look, maybe these tech people need to figure out that their algorithm ain't fucking working. It's just like it's just perpetuating bad things.
They don't care.
Um,
They don't care, dude.
that's true. More eyeballs, right? More eyeballs
Correct.
for them, right? So, maybe we should do a whole Man Up episode, but just like it just be bizarro Man Up. Let's just fucking just talk about all the like false stuff and actually see if that shit goes viral, you know?
Oh, it would. Let's like doctors talk. It would go like doctors talking about all bad advice, right? Um, but no, I think also part of it is just having open conversations. I think we're just really struggling as a society to have a conversation, sit down with someone, have a real like just be with someone instead of just being on our phones, making an environment at home for us in our office that allows people to ask questions about things that they're seeing online,
Yeah,
and not making it a secret amongst all the guys in the community. Um, and truthfully, it's kinda crazy because, like, these younger people are getting credit cards from somewhere to buy all these memberships, to subscribe to these people, and I think, understanding where your money for your kid is going is probably a big thing, and checking that credit card account and seeing, like, "Yeah, am I actually fueling this shit?" And, figuring that out, but It's scary, and I think that if you're a listener and you're unsure whether someone is scamming you or not, because these guys can be convincing, right? We said already, they get a lot of things right. They, in many times, they're very body positive. They're positive to build you up. They want you to eat healthy. They want you to eat, to exercise. But then when you get a little bit closer, you realize there's a lot of bullshit and motivations underneath it. But anyone who's selling you a product to look like them or be like them is automatically a red flag. You really should not be doing that, right? Like any kind of health product. Listen, if it's clothing, fine. Clothing's cool, outfits, stuff like that. We're talking health products specifically, supplements, peptides, TRT. You have to look like, who is this person? What's their background? Do they actually have an understanding of what they're pushing? Sure, they maybe look good. They may not even be taking that. The truth is, right? But you have to ask these questions before you purchase something, especially before you put something in your body. And if you're a young kid out there, definitely talk with your parents, talk with a doctor before you ever think about doing any of this stuff. But the problem is these grifters, they shapeshift. They're popular one day, and then there's a brand new one 5 seconds later, and it's impossible to keep track of. I didn't even know who half of these people were in this documentary. Did you?
No, the only guy I know was that Sneeko guy, but I feel like because he just sometimes shows up on the Twitter feed, but never heard of what's that HS what's Tiki Taki or
HS
whatever?
Nicky Doggy.
I didn't know
The
him.
guy Austin who's in Miami, I knew. I've seen him not in
That's the guy that
person.
was married, right? Or like
Yeah,
has a wife
no,
with
he
like
has a
kids.
wife or a partner,
Yeah.
and then the guy Gaines or whatever his name is in Miami also.
But it
So
doesn't even feature like the guy that I like really see all over the place is this clavicular looks maxing dude, you know?
clavicular rules, kind of though.
Well,
I'm
we're
not gonna
all in the
lie.
clavicular
Clavicular
protocol.
is incredibly entertaining. That guy is entertaining. It's so entertaining. I can't look away, man. I just can't look away. It's
I
just
mean,
crazy.
what's crazy though, like, right? Like on
It's
clavicular,
so
like,
entertaining to watch this stuff. That's the thing.
yeah, but like he, wait, what do you do? He put trimix in his dick, right? Like, this is like, how old is he? He's like, what, mid-20s, whatever, and he's just putting
No, he's like
trimix in the penis.
19, dude. I think he's
No,
20.
19.
Said he took meth to suppress his appetite.
Look, it is,
But it's made
it
him a
is,
millionaire. So people are gonna do it. It's crazy.
yeah, yeah.
It's you know, people are doing some fucked up shit to their bodies to make a buck without long-term understandings of those implications because we all feel like God. I don't know.
But
I think I
to
yeah.
to that though, I will say this. As you mentioned some other positives, it is also forcing us specialists to also though reevaluate that this is a potential new reality, right? You have guys who say like, "Oh no, these docs were never optimizing us. We're never optimizing us." Oh, do we still think a lot of them are wrong? Yes, but I do think that has broached us intellectually to be like, okay, yeah, Justin and I have these conversations off camera all the time. Like, okay, yeah, so maybe there should be optimization of testosterone when you're in your fertile years, right? But we're because you know why? Because the patients are coming to us. We're having to admit 20-year-olds who are like maxed out on testosterone. You're kind of like, it's a new reality that we're kind of in, and we will learn, but also at the same time, it's again just a new reality that we got to kind of face.
Yeah, I think that is such an excellent point because you're right. And that's why you and I watch this stuff because we're trying to meet patients halfway. Because if we stay in our old mindset, we're almost just as bad because we're not going to be able to help people who actually need help by, sticking to just one point. We have to shift the needle to meet them somewhat halfway if we're ever going to connect with a lot of this population. I think that's a really good point. Fuck. I think my camera just died.
Oh, well, that's probably a good time to kind of wrap it up. But yeah, look, guys, for everyone out there, listeners who didn't even know about it, I think it's worthwhile to watch. It's interesting, and